Tanisha Sullivan, president of the NAACP Boston branch, and your host today. Well, the convention programming kicked off Wednesday with the Act So program, and yesterday with our grassroots civic engagement boot camp. Today, there are several neighborhood activations around Black Boston. Well, we know this convention will touch on many issues important to our nation. And on this special edition of Basic Black, we're discussing the impact of the recent affirmative action and student loan debt decisions by the Supreme Court. How will these decisions affect students and their families? Joining me today, Renée Graham, Associate Editor and Columnist at the Boston Globe. Traci Griffith, Director of the Racial Justice Program for the ACLU of Massachusetts. Dr. Lynn Perry Wooten, President of Simmons University. And Phillip Martin, Senior Investigative Reporter for GBH News. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
All right, so let's jump right in. And I'm going to start, Renée, with you. Now, you have said that the Supreme Court plays an outsized role in people's lives today. We know that Senators Warren and Markey are both calling for reform, ranging from expanding the number of justices on the Supreme Court to even discussions about limiting lifetime appointments. Can you share a little bit with us about your observations of this Supreme Court and its impact on our country today?
Well, I have to say, Tanisha, this is unlike any Supreme Court I've seen in my lifetime. I think most of us can say that. An important thing to remember is we do have this 6-3 split, this ideological split. And the three justices who were appointed by Donald Trump when he was president are all in their 50s. So we're looking at another 30 years of this court in a lot of ways. The decisions they're making are life-changing, and the Supreme Court's always made life-changing decisions. But the decisions are coming from such an ideological bent that I think it is having an impact beyond what people could have imagined. So if you go back to what happened last year with essentially the gutting of Roe v. Wade, and then this year with these decisions around the affirmative action and student loans, all of these things have a disproportionate impact on communities of color. But I think that's part of the plan. You know, when you're talking about affirmative action, when you're talking about student loans, you're talking about how people better themselves, their abilities to go to college and to do things that are important, not just for them, but for their communities. So if you're keeping certain people out of college because they can't afford to go there, they don't want to get into massive debt, then you're talking about a future of Black doctors and lawyers and architects and journalists and all these people who aren't going to exist because they're being purposely kept out of colleges and universities. So, you know, it's really devastating what's been happening. None of it is surprising, but there's still a deep impact when it actually happens, and we have to live with the consequences of this.
Thank you. And, you know, when we think about the consequences of these decisions, we know, Traci, that there are legal paths that we can take to address some of what we're seeing nationally. But there's also some action that can be taken at the more local level, at the grassroots level, through our advocacy organizations. Can you share a little bit about what you're seeing within the civil rights community in response to some of these decisions?
I don't think that there's anybody in the civil rights organizations that were surprised about this, right? We knew this was coming, we saw it coming, and so we kind of strategized. What are the ways in which we can affect change without depending on the Supreme Court? Because, as Renée said, we know that looking forward, we've got many years of a Supreme Court that will be not so friendly to issues of civil liberties and civil rights. And so we have to strategize and come up with ways in which we can deal with this and these issues on the ground level without having to go through the courts. And so it is really reaching out to individuals. It's reaching out to communities, getting people involved. Voting rights, right? Who are the people who are making decisions about, your school board and the books that we're seeing being banned in some places, right? The things that are on the ground, the things that we can deal with on a day-to-day basis. And that's the way that we work together, organizations, community organizations, folks who live in these communities, to really make a difference on the day-to-day lives.
Is there anything that you've heard over the last few weeks, over the last few months, in terms of some of the solutions, innovative solutions coming from the ground up that you think have particular promise?
Sure. I mean, if you're looking specifically or talking specifically about the ways in which we can get our students into colleges, right? Students of color, now that colleges can no longer consider race, we're looking at different ways. We're looking at things like community groups that are looking at funding. How can we get more funding for students of color to get through these institutions? How can we reach out to high schools and even middle schools so that we are getting them in a place where they are prepared to enter school, where the issue of race can be, I want to say, mitigated to some degree. We're also pushing for things like doing away with standardized testing, right? It's been shown that standardized testing is extremely problematic for people of color, right? And so if we can get schools to do away with standardized testing as an entry into higher education, that's another way in which we can address those issues.
Wonderful, and it is the perfect segue to Dr. Wooten. You know, in terms of the conversations that are happening among leaders on our college campuses today, what are some of the conversations that are being had about certainly the Supreme Court's decisions, but more specifically, what are some of the conversations that you and your colleagues are having about what's next?
Right, like my panelists, we knew this was coming, and so we were practicing what I call prepared leadership. And we have to think about the whole education ecosystem as said. First, we have to have more investments in the K-12, especially the K-12 where we see brown and black and people from under-resourced backgrounds. But then higher ed, we have to rethink admissions. In my previous job, I threw out traditional admissions and test optional and created portfolios where people could demonstrate their talents. Beyond that, you know, if you had to work through high school, if you were a Girl Scout, if you were involved in your church, all of those type of things. So holistic admissions has to be front and center. The other thing that I want people to realize is this affirmative action decision only affects a small percentage of colleges. 90% of the colleges, it doesn't matter because they're not as selective. They're not having to think about race. And we need to support those 90% of those colleges. Community colleges, historically black colleges, women's-centered colleges, all of those state colleges have doors open for diversity. And we need to think about that landscape too. The other thing in higher ed we're thinking about, and my panelists have touched on this, it's not only about getting people in the door, it's making sure they get an ROI on their degree. And I know we're going to talk about student loans in a second, that they're learning, that they get jobs, that they can pay back those tuition, that they can have legacies and create it for the next generation. So outcomes are important too. So it's opening the doors, it's creating thriving experiences and experiences of belonging, but we have to be committed to the outcomes. You know, okay, so the Supreme Court threw something out, but you know what? We can play their game. We can out-strategize them. It's the importance of corporations need to step up, the foundations and nonprofit and other government sectors.
One of the things that I found very interesting about the decision in the Harvard and UNC cases is that the Supreme Court, in Justice Roberts' opinion, was very clear that race in admissions can be considered when we're talking about how race has impacted a student's their lives. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right, and I came from Michigan, so Michigan 20 years ago, we had to learn how to live without affirmative action. Is that, how has race impacted you? What have you learned from your racial experiences? What have you learned from being in a diverse community? What has been a disadvantage from you? What are the inequities and the disparities we can all look at? Also, we can look at how you are an equity warrior, how you advance diversity in your community. So there are creative ways. They said that the military academies can still consider race.
Right.
And so we have to be creative. But this is why coming together as a community to make creative solutions are so important.
So, Phillip, 2024.
Oh, yeah.
Right around the corner.
It sure is.
Do you think the Supreme Court is going to be a topic of debate?
Without question. Without question, the Supreme Court, this particular Supreme Court, will and is a topic of debate. As my colleague said, you have a Supreme Court that's going to be around for a long time. We expect other pillars of progress to be dismantled by the Supreme Court. Affirmative action is a pillar of progress. LGBTQ rights are pillars of progress. Abortion and access to abortion, women's reproductive rights, that's a pillar of progress. These pillars of progress are being torn down by the U.S. Supreme Court with help from a very radical ex-president who, of course, appointed these three of them, and with help from a very radical grassroots that is also abetted by a notion that democracy seems to be less important, pluralistic democracy, less important in this country than it's been in the past, precisely because these issues of progress have threatened or seem to have threatened a number of people. They feel by any means necessary that they could tear down the pillars of progress. And one of those instruments, sadly, is the U.S. Supreme Court, led by Alito and Clarence Thomas. So without question, the U.S. Supreme Court as an institution, as a body, as an issue, will be relevant and on the ballot in 2024. People will consider what will be the next shoe to drop, if you will. We've seen student loans programs setback, affirmative action setback. You've seen LGBTQ rights setback in a case where where some of the facts weren't even facts in the Supreme Court. And so you can assume that there will be a major focus on this particular body.
And just to pick up there, I mean, what we're already seeing could be described as backlash in terms of state legislators across the country trying to expand the Supreme Court's recent decisions to other areas of equity, access, and opportunity. We're seeing corporations revisiting some of their diversity initiatives. We're seeing municipalities even pulling back on some of their diversity initiatives just because of the chilling effect of this decision. How do you see some of these efforts, whether it be in the private sector or from some of the other government agencies, how do you see these impacting our communities in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, it's a great question, because I think what we have to look at when we look at these decisions that have occurred within the Supreme Court, it's not simply confined to affirmative action, for example, within universities. This seeps down into high schools. It seeps down to the very way we think about this notion of equity, this notion of inclusion, this notion of diversity. And so that's a corporate issue as well, where corporations, for example, feel less commitment than they may have felt in the immediate aftermath of George Floyd's murder, for example, in 2020, to make a commitment to change the corporate culture. And that would and hire more people of color, more black people specifically. I think we also, Tanisha, have to go back even further. We're looking at a whole reversal possibility of Brown v. Board, because again, this is not just a question of two selective universities, as the affirmative action decision seemed to suggest for many people, nor is it simply a question of people being deprived of the ability to take access to a student loan forgiveness program. We're seeing these things seep down into communities, black communities, brown communities across the country. You also see efforts to divide people. With this affirmative action case, this was a clear example of the most classic of strategies of divide and conquer. In this case, to try to divide Asian Americans from black Americans and brown Americans. It was a classic example, and it met with some success, but not completely, because you have large percentages of individuals who understood what was going on and what is going on with this type of strategy.
Right there. Absolutely, Phillip. Renée, you've written a lot about this. in terms of what we're seeing from our institutions, whether we're talking about our judicial system, Supreme Court, or we're talking about Congress, and many of the policy positions that are debated, even if not advanced, and how these institutions, American institutions, today specifically, may be impacting how we as individuals are interacting on issues of race and racism. Can you just share a little bit with us about how you're seeing where we are today and its impact in local communities and how folks are engaging?
I think there's a few things. I mean, something that I always found fascinating was the way that the people who were against Roe never gave up. 50 years. Mm-hmm. Generation to generation to generation. And I think what happened on the other side is people thought, well, it's settled law, so we're going to be fine. I think one of the things we have to understand in communities is there's no such thing as settled law anymore. There's no such thing as a protected class for people with rights. We've seen that with that case out of Colorado, 303 Creative, the hypothetical case that allowed a woman to decide that, well, I don't need to make websites for gay couples, even though there was no gay couple and she doesn't make wedding sites, it doesn't have it. It was all nonsense. But that's where we are now. So I think the strategy has to be changed in how communities go about this and not take the idea that it's all going to work out. It's not working out. This is happening time and time again. And if people didn't understand that with Roe, which they certainly should have, they have to understand where we are this year, because the sky's the limit right now with the Supreme Court. Nothing is off the table. And as Phillip was saying, it's going to be same-sex marriage. It's going to be contraception. It's going to be any sort of DEI program, and those are already falling apart because everyone's gotten over their performative antics after George Floyd's murder, and now they're sort of going back into, well, we don't really want that. And so all those people, when they're laying off, DEI, the first people who are going. So I think communities have to rethink how they approach this and be as ardent as the other side is, because they never gave up. What the people on the right did was they kept plugging away until they got a court that would work for them. And so I hope going into 2024, people have a different understanding of you're not just voting for president, you're voting for the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And what difference that's going to make. I don't think people really appreciate that in 2016. Certainly no one expected Donald Trump to get 3 nominees, but he did, and that's where we are now. And so people have to behave accordingly and sort of bring the same ammunition that the other side is.
Well, Traci, there may be some people who think that we're just, we have this house is on fire mentality, and it's really not that bad. The system will do what the system needs to do. What do you say to that?
Well, if you think about it in terms of the way things were 50 years ago and where we've come to, we're going right back to where we were 50 years ago. And if that does not worry you, you're not paying attention, right? This is a strategy that has been long in the making, right? And we recognize that the enemies of civil rights and civil liberties are busy, right? They are busy strategizing, they are busy preparing, and we have to do the same. Civil liberties and civil liberties fights don't stay won. We have to keep fighting for them every single day. This is not something that we can rest and say, oh, okay, so Roe v. Wade, okay, that's good, all done, we're good. We know that that's going forward. Well, look, right, we're right back where we started, right? We have to keep the fight going. And if the Supreme Court is not the place where we launch that fight, then we've got to look at other areas. We've got to look within communities. We've got to look to higher ed. We've got to look to corporations. We've got to look to organizations to help with that fight on a day-to-day basis.
There are many places where we need to remain vigilant, absolutely. And one of the other areas, and we haven't touched on it just yet, is student loan debt. Someone said to me last week, they said, it's very interesting that, we can bail out corporate America, but when it comes to working people, right, all of a sudden, student loan debt cancellation is off the table. And so, Dr. Wooten, want to talk about student loan debt cancellation. The Biden administration reintroduced an alternative plan to student loan debt management. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, what it speaks to is we don't care about education or higher education. We think that it's something for the rich, who can afford to pay for it, and everybody else, you're on your own. And so the cancellation of the student loan debt forgiveness says that, like I said, we don't care about higher ed. We don't understand generational wealth. So if I cancel the loan and then I have to pay it back, I can never own a house. I can't afford to send my kids to college. I can't get out of poverty. So we're creating these cycles of poverty. And it goes back to what my panelists have said. We need systems that invest in higher education and help students pay for this. We're one of the few developing countries where people have to pay anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 a year for undergraduate education. And then we don't want to help them with their loans. This makes no sense. And every time Biden comes up with a program, they try to slap them down. And so therefore, like you said, the fight is every day. And everyone has to be at the table. And there are multiple forms of government. Our states need to think about affordability. Our cities need to think about affordability. We need multiple pathways. The corporations who employ our graduates, they need to step up and help pay for it. Because like you said, we give corporate bailouts, but no one wants to fund higher education. So what's our workforce of the future going to be?
Also think about who fights those programs for student loans. That's important. You know, it's not, every AG, it's always red states that are fighting these things.
Right.
Why are they fighting them? Because there's an intentionality in keeping certain groups in debt that you will never get out of.
So and I want to pick up. I want to pick up on that point, Renee, because so much of this framing is about Black people and brown people, and it's framed in such a way of, and Phillip and others have touched on this, it kind of separating us. But when we start to really dig deep into whether we're talking about student loan debt cancellation or any of the other so-called progressive policies that we're seeing that really get to economics across our country, we're talking about all of America. We're talking about working class folks, working people. And so in our final time, what I'd love to hear from you all is, Phillip, I'm going to start with you. How do we start to shift this conversation from just being about programs for Black people, for BIPOC people, to get folks to understand that this is about all of America?
Well, I think you've already done it by introducing the question. I think that people have to understand that these things are pluralistic, and if we call ourselves a pluralistic democracy, we're talking about everyone, correct? And I think in our very conversations, the very things we write about, our columns, those things cannot be demarcated issue by issue, but they have to be seen as an aggregate attack, again, on the pillars of progress. I think we need to talk about this as an attack on democracy, because that's what we're talking about. We're not just talking about an issue here and an issue there. These things are not episodic. These things represent a strategy. As the NAACP meets here in Boston, another group is holding a national meeting called ALEC. And this is a group, forgive me for not remembering the acronyms, but this is a group that is a conservative business and legislative group that's meeting in Florida. Its main speaker is Ron DeSantis, who's talking about polishing the chains of enslavement historically as part of his attempt to ban books and to revise curriculums. But what ALEC does is it proposes things like stand your ground laws. The reason you have stand your ground laws in so many states right now is because of ALEC. The reason you have a lot of bills that are basically trying to dismantle programs attacking climate change, which disproportionately affects people of color, is because of ALEC. We have to talk about how these things are connected.
So, Dr. Wooten, how would you suggest that we start to reframe these conversations so that we get to the point where we're not just talking about some parts of our community, but really understanding, yes, the interconnectedness and how this is about all of us?
We have to frame it as we are our brother and sister's keepers. And going back to my sector, when you invest in my child, you invest in everybody. And we often want to be so divided, so myopic, so me. But if we want to have a better society and advance everyone, we need this investment. We need level playing fields. We need student loan forgiveness. We need doors open. And so it's shifting from the me to the we as a society.
Traci, how do we, I mean, you're in the thick of this, and so when we talk leading the Racial Justice Project, you are talking about race every day. You are leading on issues that connected to racism every day. How do we start to change this narrative that these conversations, these programs, these policies are really just about BIPOC folks, and so that people understand that this is about all of us?
Well, I think my two panelists are absolutely correct. This is not... The attack is not simply against BIPOC folks. It is against people who are under-resourced, who have long been forgotten or ignored, and that includes a lot of members of our society, not just BIPOC people, right? In order to pay for college, you've got to be making a whole lot of money to be able to get your kids through college. That is not a black issue or a Puerto Rican issue or, it is a we issue, right? And so we've got to come together to recognize that these issues are not just affecting one segment of our society, although they do tend to affect a particular segment of our society disproportionately. But these issues are things that affect all of us. In order to have a functioning democracy, we have to have an educated populace. If we cannot educate our population, our democracy suffers. It's just that simple.
Well, that is the end of this special edition of Basic Black at the 114th National NAACP Convention in Boston. I want to say thank you to our guests for joining us this evening. Renée, racism. How do we, or how have you seen us start to shift this narrative to one that's not just solely focused on black people, BIPOC folks, but really helping us to understand that this is about our whole society?
And we have to change the way we've had this conversation for the last 400 years, is what we're talking about. Equity is not an entitlement. Equity for all is not an entitlement for some. And I think that's what people tend to think. When they think of something like affirmative action, it's like, oh, that's helping those people, as if there isn't a benefit to everyone. So we have to constantly figure out a way to broaden the idea of that if it's helping me, guess what? It's going to help you as well. It's going to help your community. If we look at what's been happening the last few weeks with climate change, we're all hot. Doesn't really matter where you live, right? Waters in Florida are 100 degrees. That's everyone's problem. Right. Yes, it's going to affect communities disproportionately because everything always does, but it affects everyone. And if we don't have clean water and we don't have clean air and we can't get ourselves cool enough or warm enough, that's everybody's problem. And we can look at that way with climate change, but essentially every other major issue facing this country. It's not just happening to these people, it's happening to everyone. And that's the thing to me. It's like equity is not an entitlement. It helps everyone. Equity is not an entitlement. It helps everyone. Mm-hmm. Traci, Phillip brought ALEC into the conversation. And, I would like to spend a little bit of time focused on public policy, because the strategy of ALEC and organizations like ALEC has been about shifting our culture through public policy. The NAACP is fundamentally today a public policy advocacy organization. We know the ACLU, our sister in the movement, also a public policy advocacy organization. When we think about our strategy going forward, does ALEC have it right?
Oh. Thanks. Well, they've got the strategy right. They've got a plan. And, Renée talked about how the red states are very loud. We're hearing about all of these policies that are coming out of the red states and all of the things that are happening there. What is happening in the blue states? Where are the voices that are coming out? We need to be yelling, right? The house is on fire. We need to be yelling. And it doesn't seem as if the urgency is quite there, right? For so many of the other places where we're hearing those red state voices. We're hearing those, conservative voices with so much power and so much authority. And so it's shaping the way that those who might be in the middle are viewing the scenario.
The purple states.
The purple states, exactly. We need to be screaming. We need to be talking about the issues as they are, not how we're imagining them to be, about how they are, the reality of the situation. And then the narrative can start to shift. But until we speak up, we have no chance.
And we need to learn how to fight.
It's not as though people aren't speaking up. Just briefly, you have the Tennessee 3, for example. That was a great example of pushing back.
Right.
You have upstanders in Newton who are pushing back. You have people who are pushing back against Moms Against Liberty, which the Southern Poverty Law Center describes as a hate group. So it's not as though people aren't pushing back. We just have to push back. Folks have to push back a lot harder.
Well, I want Renee.
We need to fight intersectionally, because that is what people in red states do. They're not just saying, we're going to concentrate on this. They're doing everything at the same time. We have to do the same thing. We don't have the luxury of just concentrating on one area at a time. We need to look at everything because it's all interconnected, and that's the way we need to approach it.
Well, Traci called out red states and where the focus in ALEC has been focused primarily in so-called red states. So are we complacent here, Dr. Wooten, when living in so-called blue states?
I think living in our blue states, we're complacent, and what we've heard today is it's a fight every day. It is a strategic fight. It's policy. It's the Supreme Court. It's the legislative body. We have to fight. And sometimes the blue states rest on their laurels. Oh, we're good. We're liberal. Things are fine. Their policies aren't going to impact us. Well, climate change goes everywhere. Their policies go everywhere.
So when we start to think about this, again, I'm going back to the narrative of, when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, affirmative action programs, student loan debt cancellation, that this is just about them and it's not about the collective us. When we talk about but what we're seeing is the work of organizations like ALEC and others that have been very focused, deliberate, and intentional, and really working to not only shift public policy, but also working very hard to shift that Supreme Court. For those of us who are in this work, of the civil rights work, Traci, I'm coming back to you. How do we're on fire, but how do we really help to reach our communities so that we've got more of a groundswell of people who understand where we are right now and the crisis that we are in?
I think it has to come from the ground up, right? I think it's within the communities. I think it's about, who's getting elected to the school board and, shaping policy for our K through 12 and who's getting elected mayor in small towns. I think it is about the day-to-day kind of action that folks are taking on the ground. And I think organizations like ours need to be in those communities to hear what those issues are, right? Is it an issue of housing? Is housing adequate? Is it an issue of food insecurity? And it may be all of those things, but those things affect multiple organizations and multiple people in multiple places. This really isn't a political issue. It is a human issue, right? That there are people who are hungry. There are people who are suffering within our communities. We need to reach them on the day-to-day basis, right? And so if it's shoring up our educational system, and if that means we need certain people that will work towards making sure books aren't banned in this particular school, or if it's working towards, a food security issue and it's gardens in particular neighborhoods, it is really on the ground work. It is day-to-day on the ground work. And I think then it moves its way up. Again, if we're looking to the Supreme Court to solve these issues, that's not going to happen. Not anytime soon.
And higher education has a role. When we think about democracy and protests and all the things we've talked about in the 60s, we need to really re-energize higher education. Part of my job is to educate people to be good citizens, to be democratic citizens.
Are you seeing, Are you seeing that energy on your campus and
I'm
others?
seeing it on other campuses. They're protesting for affirmative action. They're concerned about Roe v. Wade. They're concerned about LGBT rights. But we have to bring that in the classroom. They're concerned about books being banned. So this is why higher education is important in the society, and in the red states, they don't like it. Because we are educating a democracy to challenge the status quo.
And so with your students on Simmons, of course, we know Simmons attracts a special, dynamic type of students. How has the activism shifted over the last few months, especially with these recent?
Yeah. So what we've seen on a lot of campuses is that the pandemic tempered students, and now they're getting reenergized again because they weren't there in person. They didn't get to learn that skill set and pass for generation to generation. But now they are activating, and they are challenging faculty. They're thinking about policy. They're thinking about the careers. They want to be careers that they can change the world and really fight against these things.
Phillip, coming back to you again for just an overview of your observations when we're talking about the activism on our college campuses. The reason I want to stay there is because we know generation after generation, movement after movement, it really has been both community and our young people who have been able to hold our feet collectively as a country to the fire, and that has allowed us to move forward.
I was just thinking about what Dr. Wooten was just saying, because I was thinking about all of us were probably, I'm guessing, activists on our campuses. We were anti-apartheid, racism. I was an activist, certainly. And I think a lot of, these things have to be, perceived existential. And I think when you see it that way, you are, in fact, more active. One reason you're seeing so many young people, for example, involved in climate change is they think, I'm going to be here 10 years from now.
Right.
I'm going to be experiencing these fires, these floods, this awful weather, and it's unpredictable. People are thinking about democracy. When you see someone who has authoritarian, not just traits, but spelling out an authoritarian policy, if he is reelected, that is no longer theoretical. That gets people up and about and worried and concerned. And you see that on a lot of campuses. You see that with Simmons students. You see that with Harvard students. You see that with Northeastern students, but not enough. I think it becomes enough, that is to say, I think you have lit a fire when people actually believe, oh my God, this is impacting me. And that is starting to happen. I'm glad Renée brought up the example of climate change, because you've had people up until a year ago who poo-pooed the notion of climate change, until all of a sudden the crops are burning down and the temperatures are so hot that it's driving you from where you live, and so on and so forth. That is happening on college campuses to the degree where individuals see this red lights, this fire alarm about democracy, and realize it's no longer a silent alarm. It is ringing loudly. Democracy is threatened. We have reintroduced words that we thought would never be pertinent to the United States. Fascism. People are concerned about fascism. You had Madeleine Albright write about this, about creeping fascism, and concerns that groups like the Proud Boys and the Patriot Front and other groups that are joining common cause with elected officials in places like Florida, the Tampa Public Schools, Sarasota. You have the Proud Boys, who have been basically allied with the Moms for Liberty in these places, and these things are connected because they're making common cause with what we used to call mainstream organizations, but the mainstream has become extreme, at least on one side of the political equation. We're taught to think about Republicans and Democrats as a sort of a balance. But it becomes difficult when you're starting to see one party actually gravitating toward things that are classified academically as authoritarian and fascist. And so we have to be on the lookout for that, and I think young people are.
Absolutely. And in our final minutes, we started this conversation wrapping around the Supreme Court, and have really anchored it with the affirmative action decision, student loan debt cancellation. We've talked about the recent LGBTQ case. We've talked about Dobbs. The last 18 to 24 months, the last two sessions of our Supreme Court have really presented to us decisions that have, as we've said today, taken us back several decades. As we look forward to the next session, in closing, what do you have your eyes on that this court may have before it next year? I'm going to start. Yes, that was a deep breath.
Deep breath.
I'm going to start. Traci, I'm coming to you.
Sure. I think coming out of the affirmative action decision, we need to look at the other kinds of affirmative action that may be falling next, right? We need to look at, and to some degree it has already, but LGBTQ rights, right? Is the next step going after, gay marriage? Is it going to be, we don't want to think that that's the direction necessarily, but, and the other things that come out of those affirmative action decisions, are we able to have, race-based affinity groups? Are we able to have race-based scholarships? Are we able to have, are we able to look at race even as a holistic notion? How is this decision going to affect those things?
Wonderful. Dr. Wooten, I've got 30 seconds.
I lead a women's college, and so I'm worried about reproductive rights. A woman's ability to make decisions about her own body. It's setting us back. And I don't know what this court's going to do.
And Renee, 30 seconds.
Same-sex marriage, period. We know that they're going to go after it, and that's why I'm really focused at this moment.
Phillip?
Same-sex marriage, the press, the ability to basically revisit the New York Times decision, and I think a modification of a further problem with affirmative action, looking at affirmative action in corporations and other institutions.